In August of 1590, a man named John White stepped onto a beach he hadn't seen in 3 years. He was looking for his family, his daughter, his granddaughter, and 113 other people he'd left behind. What he found was nothing. No bodies, no signs of a struggle, no ash, no blood, no wreckage. Just an empty fort, and one word carved into a wooden post: CROATOAN. That's it. That's the entire clue. One word carved by hand for a mystery that's lasted over 400 years. And until very recently, nobody could prove what it meant. But before we rewind the clock, you need to understand who you're actually looking for. John White wasn't just some settler who wandered off into history. He was an artist, one of the most skilled illustrators of his time, personally chosen to document England's very first attempt at a permanent foothold in the New World. And when Queen Elizabeth's government needed someone to actually lead that colony, they made him governor. This wasn't a random expedition. Spain already had an empire in the Americas. England had nothing. Roanoke was supposed to change that. The first real English colony on American soil, and White was the man responsible for making it work. But this story isn't really about a colony. It's about a family. Among the 115 people White was governing was his own daughter. When White eventually sailed back to England, he wasn't just abandoning a colony he was responsible for. He was leaving his own child behind, on a strange shore, 3,000 miles from help. That's who vanished, not just 115 strangers. A governor's entire world, his colony and his daughter, gone without a trace. By the end of this video, you're going to know something almost nobody outside of a small circle of archaeologists knew until last year. Because in 2025, someone finally found physical proof of what actually happened to these people. Real evidence, buried under centuries of dirt on an island most Americans have never heard of. Let's go back to the beginning. In 1587, a ship carrying 115 English men, women, and children crossed the Atlantic. Their goal was the Chesapeake Bay, fertile land, a good harbor, a real shot at England's first permanent colony in the New World. But their ship's pilot, a man named Simon Fernandez, refused to take them any further. He dropped them on a small, swampy island instead. Roanoke. It was the wrong place from day one. The soil was poor, the harbor was too shallow for large ships, and relations with the local tribes were already damaged. A previous English expedition had killed a native leader here just a year earlier. Within days of arriving, one of the new colonists was killed. The English retaliated against the wrong village. They were surrounded by people they'd already given reason to distrust them, with barely enough food to make it through the season. There was one bright moment. In August of 1587, White's daughter gave birth to a baby girl. They named her Virginia, the first English child ever born in America. 9 days later, the colonists made a decision that would haunt all of them. They convinced John White, the governor and Virginia's own grandfather, to sail back to England for supplies. He agreed. He thought he'd be back within months. Instead, he was gone for 3 years. Because right as White reached England, war broke out with Spain. The Spanish Armada was bearing down on the English coast, and Queen Elizabeth seized every ship in the country for the war effort. White begged to return. He couldn't get a ship, not for months, then not for years. By the time he finally made it back to Roanoke in August of 1590, on what would have been his granddaughter's 3rd birthday, everyone was simply gone. No fight, no fire. The buildings had been carefully taken apart, not destroyed. Whoever left on purpose and left calmly. Before he'd sailed away 3 years earlier, White and the colonists had agreed on a signal. If they ever had to leave, they'd carve their destination into a post. And if they left because of danger or attack, they'd carve a cross above it. White found the word CROATOAN. No cross. Which meant, as far as White could tell, they weren't in danger. They'd simply moved, calmly, to a nearby island that native allies called home. He tried to sail there immediately. A hurricane hit. His ship was damaged, his crew was out of supplies, and the captain refused to try again. White returned to England without ever setting foot on CROATOAN. He never got another chance. He died years later in Ireland, having never learned what became of his family. For 4 centuries, that's where the trail went cold, and into that silence came every theory imaginable. Some historians believed the colonists split into 2 groups, one heading to CROATOAN Island, the other moving inland to live among the Roanoke people near the Chesapeake Bay. A darker theory holds that this second group was eventually killed in 1607 in a raid ordered by the Powhatan paramount chief, the same tribal leader whose daughter, Pocahontas, would later become famous in Jamestown. Other researchers zeroed in on a hidden mark on White's own hand-drawn map of the region, a small 4-pointed star painted over and hidden under a patch of paper, marking a location 50 miles inland. Archaeologists dug there. They found broken English pottery. There were also fake leads. In the 1930s, a set of engraved stones surfaced, supposedly written by White's own daughter, describing the colonists' fate in detail. They were almost certainly an elaborate hoax. Real historians dismissed them. And then there's the climate angle. Tree ring records show that 1587 to 1589 was the worst drought this region had seen in 800 years. Whatever else happened to these people, they were also trying to survive one of the driest, harshest stretches in the area's entire history. For a long time, the leading theory, the one most historians actually believed, was simple. The colonists went to CROATOAN Island, just like the carving said, and joined the native community already living there. But most likely isn't the same as proven. For 400 years, nobody had the hard evidence to close the case. Until May of 2025. On Hatteras Island, the modern name for CROATOAN, archaeologists digging beneath a thick layer of centuries-old debris found something unexpected. 2 piles of iron flakes. Hammer scale, the exact byproduct left behind when someone is forging metal. The native communities living there at the time had no blacksmithing tradition of their own. They didn't work iron this way. The English did. It's the first physical, on-the-ground evidence connecting the lost colony directly to the island named in that 400-year-old carving. Not a theory, not a hidden map, an actual forge site, found exactly where the one clue always pointed. Historians now believe the colonists arrived on CROATOAN with almost nothing and tried to survive by reworking whatever metal tools and scraps they'd brought with them, living alongside and very likely blending into the community that took them in. There's one more thread worth knowing. Centuries later, in the 1880s, a very different community in Robeson County, North Carolina, was found to carry surnames and language patterns tracing back to those very colonists. Today, their descendants are part of the Lumbee, one of the largest Native American tribes east of the Mississippi. If the theory holds, the lost colony was never really lost. It became something else. It became part of the people who took them in. So the next time someone tells you, "This is America's greatest unsolved mystery," you can tell them it might not be unsolved anymore. But here's the thing about mysteries like this one. Every answer just uncovers a stranger question underneath it. And there's one lost civilization we haven't touched yet. One where 50,000 soldiers marched into a desert and simply never marched back out. That one's next.